Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another Real Estate America's Newsroom. It is the 30th day of the month of June. We're halfway through the year, and if you're watching this, we're survivors. Did you know today is National Work from Home Day, amongst many other things? And my infamous co-host, Mr. Nick Sakis, is going to join us and tell us how this day is lining up for all national type things. You're going to be excited and interested to hear that. I also heard it was National Corvette Day. So for those of you guys that are ripping around in your hot red Corvettes, living like you're young and fancy free, let us know in the comments below. Today we've got a big show. Ladies and gentlemen, we're obviously moving into the 4th of July weekend. And yes, we're all going to enjoy it, celebrate our independence. But until we get there, let's go ahead and cover some ground. $90,000 home listing drop in San Jose, California. So it seems like things are starting to come down. We're going to watch a little news clip from out there and see what's happening in their neck of the woods. Pantera Capital CEO Dan Morehead says the Fed is running a Ponzi scheme. So that's quite interesting, sitting in the mainstream news. We'll tune in, get their opinion, and we'll roundtable with some of the gentlemen. Work from home has its challenges, right? We've seen a lot of things happen in the last couple years, and with today being a National Work from Home Day, we're going to take a look at some bloopers, some pretty interesting, funny things that actually went ahead and happened to some folks in the news and the weather reporters, things like that. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, moving scams have kept ticking up here. We're seeing 200% increases in moving scams. So if you're planning on selling your home in one place and moving to another, there is a lot of red tape out there in the moving world. So we've got some mainstream news on some unfortunate situations that people have been dealing with. You need to know about it so you, your friends, and family are safe. And as always, we're going to go ahead and get into my favorite segment, mortgage news, because we need to know what's going on, and it moves fast with Captain Kirk Jaffe, the one and only. All right, before we get rolling forward, let's go ahead and introduce my esteemed and fellow co-host, Mr. Nick Sakis. How are you doing today, sir?
Sarge, what's up, buddy?
I am just ready to hear all of the holidays of today. Break it down for us.
Yeah, we got some really important news before we get to the real estate stuff, right? I love this website, nationaltoday.com. It's a good talking point if you're talking to your clients. Bring stuff up. It can kind of be an icebreaker. For example, like today is International Asteroid Day.
Oh.
Not quite sure where you could take that conversation, but you know what? You probably should throw that in there.
Is that like anybody, the old video game, like Asteroid?
No, like it literally shows a picture of a giant rock heading towards the Earth.
Wait, that's not a good sign.
That's not a good sign. We talked about National Work from Home Day. Probably end of millennial-ish, like where I am. There's Blink 182. If you're a Blink 182 fan, I don't know.
Oh, nice.
I wasn't really. International Day of Parliamentarism. That's a tough word. Say that.
What does that mean?
I don't know. It just shows a picture of a Congress house, looks like. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a national bomb pop. If anybody put in the comments, have you ever had a bomb pop ice cream, whatever this is, novelty?
How did that even get onto the national charts of things?
I'm a big guy, and I don't even know what a bomb pop is, so I'm not real sure. Now, the Corvette thing is interesting. I'll bring this up for a second. So typically when you see the 50, 60-year-old guy driving around town in the Corvette, it's like, hey, this guy's going through a midlife crisis, right? But what's interesting about that is really most people live till they're like 78 years old. I think it's the average lifespan. It's like 75, 76, 78. So really your midlife crisis car would be a 35 or a 30. You'd be 38 years old. So I'm like prime right now. I just turned 38. I am prime age for a Corvette for actual midlife. So I think I might have to go shopping here pretty soon.
Oh, trading in the minivan for the Corvette and hiking up your socks and grabbing your tennis racket.
It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Minivan straight to Corvette, baby.
That's fantastic. Any other days that we need to be aware of? How do we even celebrate all of this stuff?
I don't know. It's also National Handshake Day. So if you're working from home, go out there and shake somebody's hand.
Yeah. That's interesting in and of itself.
Yeah, there's a lot of funny stuff on here. It's a good, again, check out the website. It's nationaltoday.com. You can see there's always half a dozen different types of days. You know, again, good icebreakers when you're having business conversations with people just to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. It's good stuff.
You know, it's getting to that time of year. The weather's nice in most places of the U.S. and in the world, and weather is starting to change. I heard it's going to be a very big tropical weather pattern this year, so we'll see if that develops. But yesterday while we were running through the production room, somebody said, "Hey, Sarge, take a look at this. The weather got interesting for these concert goers. Check this out."
Alter. Junge. Junge, pass auf. Junge.
Listen, that we might not be in a concert situation, but as many people that move to Florida on a daily basis that go to the beach that have never been to the beach before, that is what our beach looks like, because we have dozens of people from out of state that are trying to set up their little rinky-dink tents, have no idea that they can be taken 100 yards, if not more, away from them in a split second. I've seen plenty of those types of scenarios on the beach of Tampa Bay.
So interesting. So what do you call those things where somebody straps a fan to their back underneath one of those parachutes and is just flying around?
It's called stupid.
Okay.
That's what I call it.
So I was at the beach and one of my children innocently looked up and said, "Dad, what do you do if you have to use the restroom?" And I said, "Land."
Same thing a bird does.
So she said, water. "Well, I hope he doesn't pee on us as he's coming right over to." Interesting. Yes. No, I do too. I understand that.
Yeah.
So it looks like the home prices are starting to drop a little bit in California. We are seeing it. Homes are starting to go up on the marketplace, and then nobody's coming around, right? So what are sellers' options? Drop price. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at what's happening out there in Silicon Valley, and then we'll go ahead and roundtable it. Here we go.
Agents say the trend started shifting in February and March, and those who couldn't buy a home then may now be able to do so. Take the single-family home on North White Road in San Jose. It's been on the market for 24 days, and the seller did something that was unheard of just a few months ago. He recently dropped the list price by $95,000.
The market is changing. It's definitely not what it was 3 or 4 or 5 months ago.
Realtor broker Rigo Bracamontes says higher interest rates are keeping homes on the market longer. Open houses are attracting smaller crowds, and the multiple high bidders are disappearing.
Today, there will be many buyers that will be able to buy that 3 or 4 or 5 months ago were not, just because the competition is not there anymore.
And Bracamontes predicts home prices will drop even more by September and October. But the buyer still faces a hurdle. Interest rates are going up, meaning a more expensive mortgage. Those rates averaged 3% in January, and now they're as high as 6%.
The idea of let's ask this price because there are many buyers, those days are gone for the moment.
Even with the price drop, the White Road home is still listed at almost $800,000, still too high for many in this valley.
It's not an option right now, but I know that it's hard for my family as well, just because it's very expensive.
Would you like to?
I would, but it's expensive here in the Bay Area. So.
A sliver of optimism and the hope among many buyers that the trend toward truly affordable homes continues. Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News.
I think it's inevitable, right? It has to happen. It absolutely has to happen.
It's happening for sure.
In most places across the U.S., especially in the markets that have seen great high appreciation, it's going to correct. So ultimately, Captain, let us know. Talk to us a little bit about when all of a sudden interest rates go up and how people go ahead and get priced out if they were pre-qualified prior to. Kind of talk us through that side.
Yeah, like what causes interest rates to go up like this?
Yeah.
You know, in this case, it's a couple things. One, obviously you've got the Fed trying to fight inflation. So the Fed, short-term interest rates, the federal funds rate doesn't necessarily directly impact mortgage rates. However, the Fed did something interesting. In 2020, they started buying mortgage-backed securities, which they had never done in the history of the Fed. And they didn't buy, they just bought a little bit, about $6 trillion.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah, just a dollar or two. But they basically captured the whole market. So, and that drove interest rates way down. Well, now they're not buying anymore, and Wall Street's not necessarily buying either because it's not safe for them, right? If you're buying mortgages at 3% and rates are at 7%, you're not making enough money, right? So you're not going to buy a 3% mortgage if you're an investor, and you don't want to buy a 7% mortgage either because they know rates are going to come back down. So you buy a 7% mortgage today and everyone refinances it in 18 months. Now you've lost all your money too. So that creates a situation where you have to pay points up front. Points are prepaid interest. So that's why there's points on almost every loan right now, because Wall Street knows they're not going to make their money when the rates start going back down.
Sure.
So, that's what's happened to consumers, just like everything else. It all rolls downhill into the consumer's pocketbook, right? Doesn't really matter where it goes.
So when we see an interest rate hike like this, where we're rocking from 4s and then bumps into the 5s and bumps into the 6s on 30-year fixed mortgages, what percentage do you think across the nation of home buyers that were pre-approved now all of a sudden lost the opportunity in the buying pool that they were going after?
Yeah, it's interesting. In my business, I would say maybe 10% of buyers have been priced out of the market in reality, but emotionally and mentally, it's more like 50% or more.
I like that. Yeah.
People can afford it. They just don't want to think about it. So they're just stopping. They're pausing.
Well, it's like that old, when you go to buy a house now, ever since Zillow started putting sold data on their website so that someone could look at a house that they were looking at currently and go, well, this house was $200,000 cheaper. In that tough market coming up before this pandemic and everything goes crazy, like when I would be with a buyer, they would go, well, but they paid $200,000 less for this house. Like, I'm not giving them full price.
Yeah.
That's nothing to do with anything, right? Same thing with what's happening right now with interest rates. Like you just said, buyers are qualified, but they're going, God, it was just 4.5% 3 months ago. I can't do this. I'm putting my foot down. I'm not doing it. Right?
Exactly.
It's like that kind of feeling. I like that a lot.
I tell people, especially when rates were low, when they were like 3%, 2.75, and everyone was shopping. I want the lowest rate. I want the lowest rate. I'm a W-2 employee. I've got no other tax deductions. I'm paying, 40% of my income goes right off the top into the government. I want the lowest rate. I go, no, you don't. You want the highest rate, because if you take the lowest rate, say if you took a 2.5% versus a 5.5% in that market, at 5.5% at that time, the bank would have paid all your costs for you. So your out of pocket was literally just your down payment. But then you got tax deductibility that goes on year after year after year after year. So anybody that chased the lowest rate, that was a W-2 employee at that time, basically just pissed away like $60,000 over a 10-year period in tax deductibility.
I did exactly what you're talking about. I had the opportunity to go ahead and pick up in the 3s, but I went ahead and bought 4.8 and literally just down payment, which was reduced, and then closing cost extinguished.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it makes all, and you can use that credit from the bank to pay for your impound account for your taxes and insurance. So it's not only no closing costs, but you're also getting a bonus. They're paying like a year of your taxes and insurance for you too. But nobody wanted to hear about that. No, we want it because consumers like to go to the Thanksgiving table going into the holidays here at the end of the year and sit with their family and shoot the shit about who got the best deal.
Yeah.
And they think the best deal is the lowest rate, but that's not the best deal. The best deal is the one that keeps the most money in your pocket, right?
Of course. Yeah.
My world, anyway.
So I've got a question for you. So we've been historically talking about, will prices come down? Will prices stabilize? Will it appreciate fast? Right. A lot of these marketplaces that have appreciated at double digits over the last 24 months are some of our hottest markets in the U.S. and places that people want to go and live. And a lot of that has been driven by the supply issue. So you have an overinflated marketplace, right? And now all of a sudden we're starting to see prices get reduced just because of the buying pool side, but supply is still low. We could definitely see price reductions starting to happen in a lot of the hottest markets across the U.S. historically, just because of this. And then people are going to make a decision like, I'm getting so emotionally exhausted trying to go ahead and purchase this home right now with all of these instabilities.
Yep.
Like, let's just go rent for the next 12 or 24 months. And then even landlords don't want to just sign a 12-month lease. They're looking for people that have a little bit longer term commitment. So I'm starting to see folks go ahead and say, you know what, let's just pull out of this place for 24 months. Let's go rent that house. Let's give some commitment to the landlord, get stable, reevaluate, see what happens in 2 years. So I think, just like you said, Kirk, I think it's not just eligibility. It's going to be intention, right? It's all emotion. Now's not the right time.
And it's sad because those people that are going to go rent like that, and look, some people have to rent because the biggest barrier to entry right now that I see is down payment. Because prices have gone up, it's not affordability, no matter what the news says. It's down payment. As prices go up, a house goes from $500,000 to $700,000. Your down payment goes up by $40,000 if you're putting 20% down, right?
Yeah.
So that's a lot to save. But those people that go rent for 2 years, their rent's going to go up somewhere between 7 and 15% a year, depending on your market, which means they're going to take that money they were going to save and put it into rent. They're still not going to have a down payment. You know, real estate's a long game. People forget, I think, you know, everyone wants the immediate gratification as consumers, but real estate's, 10 years ago, we'll say 2014 to today, what are prices up? Like 75%?
Substantial.
Right? So, if we have a pullback of 10% or even 20%, you're up 55% over the last decade if you go in today. And it's going to be the same thing because it's going to take a long time for the housing market to adjust. Even if it goes back to normal of 1 million homes available, right now we're about 450,000 homes for sale. So say it goes back up to 1 million in 12 months and then it stabilizes. Well, in a stable market, homes go up 3 to 5% a year.
Right.
In appreciation. So we're in this little, bump right now. And, but I don't know. I think stock advisors would tell you, don't try and time the market. Look for the good values. So I'd say the same thing. Don't try and time the real estate market. Look for a good value that provides safety and security for your family today.
Well, that makes perfect sense because when we got all locked down as a country before the pandemic, I mean, it was playing havoc on the economy, right? Because nobody was at work. Everybody was trying to adjust to even figure out how in the world can we go ahead and still operate our business with people at home, and how can the government come in and subsidize the offset? And obviously, the rest of the story. But from a investment standpoint, we saw legacy companies and legacy stocks of large corporations in a area where they were down 20 to 40% compared to what they were trading pre-pandemic. And we all knew that those kind of companies wouldn't go away, the majority of them. So what a wonderful opportunity to go ahead and find the right purchase now, make it while you can, and then let it ride. So there was a lot of people that had a tremendous amount of return on their investment, good gains if they had the ability to go ahead and purchase during that time. I know.
Well, do you remember how much FUD was in the marketplace? Like, no one's ever going to go on a cruise again. No one's ever going to board an airplane again. It's the end of these two industries as we know it. That was talk for a long time, probably 6 months.
I saw an advertisement yesterday for a nuclear powered airship that will hold 5,000 people, and it just floats around on top of the earth at 50,000 feet or 40,000 feet, whatever, permanently. They do repairs in the air. If you want to get to it, you take a traditional airline to get to the ship, and then they dock and you board and you get out and you have your vacation floating atop the earth.
Oh, it's like the Jetsons for real then.
Yeah, it's like the Jetsons
Finally.
for real.
Yeah.
Wait, so you're suggesting that 5,000 of us need to go ahead and board a nuclear balloon and go hang out at 50,000 feet?
Nothing can go wrong.
Yeah.
This is great.
I don't think I'll be taking that one.
I'll be hanging out from my work at home location going, oh, honey, look at that. What is that in the air? It's a flying
The
what?
thing that fascinates me more than like the space continuum, like everybody, oh well, we're gonna live on Mars and space travel and all that stuff. Like literally on Earth, we can't even get to the depths of the ocean to find out what's living down there or what is down there versus because everybody's looking up. Like, what about what's already on the planet? Like the water that we can't even get into. That's more interesting to me of why we can't get to that versus going and live on Mars. I don't know, maybe personal.
Yeah. No, I think we all have that personal thing. I mean, out here in California, you can't water your lawn more than twice a week, and you can't do it but at night for like 5 minutes. So all the vegetation is going to die, right? It's 110 degrees here right now in the LA area. And it's just,
So what you're saying is a great time to open an artificial turf company in your area.
Artificial turf, but we were actually talking about why can't they desalinate the ocean? They're saying the ocean levels are rising. We need water. We're in a drought. In Israel, they can desalinate water. So why don't they just take the water out of the ocean, drop the levels, water the plants? I don't know.
This makes really good common sense to me, Kirk.
There's a lot of solutions to problems that, for whatever reason, solutions don't come to light. I wonder why.
Elon Musk is more interested in boring a hole underneath the surface.
He's trying to get away. Anyway. So consumer confidence, right, is an important thing. We're going to see some prices move. That's for darn sure, because of the adjustments that happened. But consumer confidence is something we're taking a look at. Speaking about consumer confidence, we know how important it is, even for our leaders in government. The President of the United States of America said just yesterday that he's urging Congress to go ahead and take away the federal gas tax for a short determinable amount of time to go ahead and offset consumers. And they're making this announcement, and we'll see what the House does with it and see how far it goes. But that means that we would pay 18 cents less a gallon-ish. And it's funny. We go back to the minds of our youth. My son is 20 years old and literally was driving with Dad yesterday to lunch. We're hearing the message, and he looks at me and says, I don't know if I even would get excited about 18 cents different, because a couple years ago I was paying $2 less. So, but we'll see. They need that federal gas tax money in order to go ahead and keep our roads and infrastructure going in the right way. That's why it was originally created. So we'll see what happens there. It just seems like there's a lot of running around left and right and back and forth here to try to go ahead and catch something falling from the sky.
Well, they better keep those roads up so that my Corvette doesn't get any dings.
That's right.
When I'm driving around town.
So I think this whole thing indirectly is to promote the drone industry, the human drone industry. Now, I really want my own drone. I want to fly my own drone around, and I think that would be cool. So
that's different from the guy with the lawnmower and fan blade on his back, right? You're talking about a enclosed drone, right?
Yeah, look it up on YouTube, everybody. Yep. Start taking a look at drones that can fly you around. It's coming to a town near you at some point.
Yeah, I saw those, like Volkswagen or something out in Japan has a template running around out there now.
Yep,
it's definitely going to happen. So, gentlemen, Pantera Capital CEO Dan Morehead says the Fed is running a Ponzi scheme. That's a pretty bold statement. Go ahead and come on onto the mainstream news and say it. Let's tune in with him and see what his thoughts are. Here we go.
Our next guest says the Fed's strategy isn't just a policy error, but a Ponzi scheme. Those are his words. Pantera Capital CEO and Co-Chief Investment Officer Dan Morehead joins us now. Dan, great to have you with us. Your letter was very interesting. And I didn't know that the Fed did not buy any bonds whatsoever for 95 years or so until now, and then they went all in. So walk us through why policy is now a Ponzi scheme.
Well, yeah. So the Fed used to just control the overnight rate, and even that has been way behind where they should be. The policy rate used to, on average, be about 1.25% above inflation. It's now 700 basis points below inflation. They've just gotten the overnight rate back to where it was right before the pandemic. And when the pandemic started, inflation in the US was 2.3, and it's now 8.3 in official terms. And then There's a problem with the way they report housing. The true inflation rate's in double digits now. So that's a policy mistake, but completely separately is their manipulation of the mortgage market. The Fed used to not invest in bonds, didn't manipulate the long curve. They let free market actors like pension plans, mutual funds, insurance companies do all the lending in the economy. But in 2020, they decided to get involved in the mortgage market. They ultimately bought $6 trillion of government and mortgage bonds. And to put that in perspective, the record year for issuance of mortgages to all Americans was a quarter that size. So in 2 years, they did 200% of all mortgage lending in the US. And there's some big ramifications that unfortunately we're just seeing now.
Hey, Dan, so Fed's credibility, I'm with you on this, and we've been harping about a lot of different things. What's the most credible thing they could do here? Because, again, you've got Jerome Powell, who people have been following the Fed, know at least this guy was a dyed-in-the-wool hawk guy who somehow got pulled in a different direction, different times. I'm not sure we defend that. What's the most credible move they can make to begin to build back?
Yeah, there's two things, right? They have to deal with the overnight rate. And for a long time, they said it was transitory or some supply chain issues. And I think to build credibility, they have to make it clear that it's not a couple container ships stuck off Long Beach Harbor. It's a supply of labor issue. We have twice as many job openings in America as we have people looking for a job. The unemployment claims in the US hit a all-time record low. Only 1 out of 1,000 people filed for new unemployment claims, which is kind of the odds of getting hit by a coconut. So they need to establish credibility on the short-term side, but really they got to stop manipulating long rates. They have to let the free market do that. And right now, Case-Shiller housing index is still running above 20% nationwide. That's not just hot markets, that's everywhere. And the Fed is loaning money in short-term at 1.5%, and even long-term rates are very cheap. We've never had that much of a spread between the appreciation of housing at 20% and mortgages at 5 or 6. That's literally double the previous wide in that spread. We had it around 5% in the 70s, and we had it about 7% just before the global financial crisis. And obviously both of those ended up disasters. So the Fed's really created a huge housing bubble, and they kind of have to get out of the housing market before that's going to correct.
Quite interesting. Quite interesting. So, you know what, Captain, why don't you go ahead and talk us through this here? When we're talking about consumer confidence, this is a little picture graphic that Captain Kirk went ahead and put together for us. Break this down. These are thumbnail news clips of the Fed, and this has been fast moving over the last couple of weeks. Go ahead, take it away for us.
Yeah, well, I really like what Mr. Morehead had to say there. And so it inspired me. So I went and I said, well, what are the headlines for the last week from the Fed? And I just started here. The Fed has said things. This one here says the Fed that the Ukraine war is not responsible. But 2 weeks ago, the headline said, Jerome Powell said it was the war that caused the inflation and all the problems. And then he started blaming consumer confidence. It's not our fault. The consumers are at blame. Then he went further. He said, well, we understand completely what's going on. This Fed understands full scope of the inflation problem. But then yesterday out in London, he said live, we don't understand anything about inflation. That's what we've discovered. So in the first of all, yeah, that's what he said. Just right here. That's his headline. So, so it's funny, the Fed, as we've talked about on this show, is Janet Yellen the mouthpiece? Is the Fed the mouthpiece? Are they ever going to admit it? The Fed chair out in Cleveland, Ohio, yesterday said she expects 0 to 0.3% increase in inflation or chance of recession, but because she's not going to ever go negative. You know what I'm saying? She's never going to say that we're in a position where things have already gone negative and we're in a recession. So she's saying, the quote that she said was GDP will grow 0 to 0.3 in the next reading. But we already know it's like minus 1.6 right now for the next reading. So, you just keep going through the infographic here. Fed chair says the recession is a possibility. Well, we know that there are certain dominoes that will predict a recession. The last domino to fall is unemployment. So he says right here, no guarantee that we can ease inflation without hurting the job market. And in fact, unemployment this week just ticked up a small amount, but it was the first time it's ticked up in a while. So I expect over the next several weeks of that number, we're going to start to see the Fed changing their tune and going, "Yep, we're in a recession now, people." So yeah, it's funny. I think at one point he even acknowledged in that infographic that the Fed they're just not doing their job. They don't get it.
So it is the Ukraine war's fault, and then no, it's not, and then it's the consumer, and we know that a recession is not going to start, but it's inevitable.
Here in California, he mentioned Long Beach. So I did some research on that because I flew out one time on a trip about, 4 or 5 months ago, and there were like 60 container ships sitting off the shore in Long Beach. I was like, whoa, what is going on here? Maybe it was a little longer, maybe it was during COVID, but it was dramatic, right? And you see it in Singapore also. So I started to drill it down a little bit more. And what's actually happening in California is California put a restriction in place that any trucker that doesn't live, work, and pay taxes in California cannot pick up goods from the Long Beach dock. So they cut out like 75% of the workforce.
Wow.
Mr. Morehead's point. So is this a recession problem? Is this a policy problem? Is this a state government problem? Is this who's pulling the strings here? I wish Tim was here because I think he'd have some strong opinions about this.
I think it's everything. Basically.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and here's the interesting scenario. Before the new policymakers got into a position of power, we saw what the previous policymakers had regarding stability of supply and demand, and amongst other things, right? So
there was one of those headlines that I showed was Powell saying the Fed doesn't have any policy in real time. So they have an idea like 3 years ago, or maybe they have an idea that they want 2%, but they have no clue how they're going to make that happen. So they just start pulling strings and pushing stuff and manipulating. And then they go, ooh, that didn't work. We better blame someone else.
Nick, it's never good to go ahead and hear one of the top investors in the U.S. go ahead and publicly say that the Fed is running a Ponzi scheme on mainstream news. What are your final takes on this before we move on?
Yeah, I think he mentioned one thing about a free market. And so just recently, when we look at like the AMC run up of these stocks and how a small group of people were able to come in and manipulate some stocks, then the big boys came in and crushed everybody and said, no, this is not how we do things. The little guy's not supposed to be able to manipulate things like we do. So like when I hear free market, I think right now, have you ever seen The Truman Show? Have you ever seen that movie with Jim Carrey?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, should I admit that?
We're in The Truman Show, right? It might not be like a television crew following you around, but like you think about that movie. If you've never seen that movie, go ahead and watch it, please. We live in a world where we feel like we are free to do whatever we want. You can own your own business. You can do your own things. You get to a certain level, you realize how things actually work and how manipulated things actually are. And so you're happy in your house. You're happy in your things. You can be, oblivious to the world. But all these devices around us are tracking. My Alexa is listening to what I'm saying right now. Everything is listening and manipulating your life based on your own behaviors. It's all a big show. We're living in a big show, right? So it's very, very interesting right now. The media has a lot to do with, we know how media actually plays into these things. But from a consumer perspective, if you ask anybody, what they think inflation is at right now, gas is 3 times more than it was. My eggs and milk are 3 times more than it was. Normal everyday stuff. So when you hear stuff on the news like, well, interest is only at 8%, is it? Like, what does that actually mean? Because I'm paying 3 times as much for everything in my life right now.
Yeah. Good deal. Thank you, Mr. Nick. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the mid-show in the news, and we're going to squeeze some hot metal here real quick. Now, I know you were waiting for something a little bit more exciting, right? But you're going to have to wait to the end of the show before we go ahead and get to that one. Just want to let you know that we're streaming live right now on the RU Nation Network. So for all of you folks that haven't gone to runation.com yet, please do. We've got the Real Estate America's newsroom over there where you can actually enter in your information to get show notes and hot insider news. And also, if you have anything from your local marketplace or you would like to participate with us on the show, enter your information here. One of our associates will reach out and hold a meeting here with you guys. So we really appreciate it. And so today, as always, being in the best holiday spirit for National Work from Home Day, it's presented much of us with many challenges throughout the years, right? And this was a very interesting clip. It was funny. I wanted to bring some positive highlights to each and every single one of you. But some of our news folks and meteorologists and everybody else had to go ahead and shift over the last couple of years to working from home. And here's some of our favorite bloopers that went ahead and hit the mainstream news. Check it out.
What did you do? Dad, holy... Here are some of our favorite lockdown reporter moments.
Lily and Savvy wanted to say hi to everybody. Come here, Sav. You're too little, Sav. They're not going to see you down there, honey.
When you're working from home, every day is bring your kids to work day.
Okay, girls, how about you go right over there and let's watch Daddy do his stuff, okay?
So when New York City meteorologist Lonnie Quinn tried to tell the forecast,
Savvy's going to cry, so otherwise we're going to just keep her with us, guys. All right, it is 6.
His kids wanted nothing more than to stay on camera.
You want to see the tutu? I'll show you the tutu one more time. There we go with our tutu.
I'm going to stay with you forever.
Well, this has gone south very quickly.
Clearly, something Lonnie wasn't forecasting was for his little ones to steal his thunder.
Okay.
Maple, can you stop just for a second?
It wasn't so sunny for meteorologist Scott Connell in St. Louis when his dog kept interrupting.
3, 2, 1. More cold air. 3, 2, 1. Cold air continues across.
He almost gets his stand-up in.
We'll show you when the best chance of precipitation is with Futurecast. Maple.
We don't need to see that forecast map. We'll just look at Brody.
Then Brody the dog made a faux pas when he accidentally hit a button that impacted Paul Delegato's forecast in Tampa, Florida.
Come here, buddy. You just messed things. Come up here for a second. Just come on. Come up here. Come on. Up, 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 up. The maps aren't going to move because he just whacked the computer with his head. So let me just verbalize the forecast, okay? That wasn't very smart.
Pets are crashing live reports everywhere. Here's a TV station in Detroit.
And by the way, Brian and Amira, you guys trying to do this with a dog watching you right here? Hey, Scout. How about that?
Yes.
What do you think? She does everything on command. Just like that, huh?
Something similar happened on the Weather Channel.
This has been my coworker all day. Everybody say hi to Astro. Chris?
Yeah, Jackie, I've got my coworker with us as well. This is Lulu.
Jessica Lang is a reporter in Sarasota, Florida. She was taping a stand-up in her kitchen with Mom behind the camera. Technology kills viruses in just one... What did you do, Mom? Dad, holy crap! Then comes Dad from down the hallway as he's putting his shirt on. Let's see that again. Technology kills viruses in just one... What did you do, Mom? Dad, holy crap! The caught-on-camera moments get worse. This reporter was live on the air on a channel in Spain. A semi-naked woman walked right behind him and into the frame. Whoops. And reporter Melinda Meza in Sacramento, California, was taping a segment on how to cut your own hair.
So people won't have to do this much longer.
But little did she realize her naked husband was in the shower. There's his reflection in the mirror.
Awkward or embarrassing moments beamed across the internet.
GMA contributor Will Reeve learned a good lesson when he opted for shorts instead of pants one morning.
Yep, that's me. Busted. Wearing shorts on GMA. My casual bottom half going viral.
A news reporter went live on the air without wearing pants. That's GMA's Will Reeve sitting in his...
You know I've got to report the news. You know that, right? I've got to report the news just because you hear dogs bark. It happens to the best of us, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sage. This is Sage. Come here, Sage. Say hi to everybody. No? Okay. Here you go. Go back to bed now. Interesting bloopers. Working from home has its challenges for sure. And look, these things these things definitely happen. Nick,
I'm left out. I didn't. Yeah, I could have gotten a stuffed animal from my son's room, maybe, but I bring my dog in here, and she goes bonkers. She's not a very quiet and cool, collected animal. She goes nuts all the time.
I love Dad casually walking down, throwing on his shirt in the hallway, and Dad, what are you doing?
I think we saw Greg McDaniel on there with a cat right in front of the camera. We've seen that several times with Greg.
Yeah, it happens. Well, Greg's pets are just part of his world. So. Yeah. Have you had any interesting moments, ladies and gentlemen, with your new Zoom adventures? Put it in the comments below. We're curious to go ahead and hear.
I don't think anybody wears pants anymore, though. I mean, I think that's pretty common knowledge, right?
Yeah. So
why would we?
Why would we?
Wait a second. Beep. Rewind. Producer.
Hey, a few weeks ago you wanted to milk cows, Jake. You know.
Yeah. I wanted to challenge somebody to a milk off. Yes, I did. Most definitely. Good deal. All right. Well, that was a little fun, uplifting moment. I wanted to go ahead and have that as a nice precursor into the next segment. So folks are moving in the United States of America. This is the time of the season where most people do move historically, right? Right after the kids get out of school in the spring, they end up putting out nice flowers, getting the gardens going, make their home the most presentable for a sale, make a transition, and especially before the kiddos have to go ahead and get back into school, right? So with that presents a lot of challenges, and there has been a tremendous amount of moving scams that people need to be aware about, and we wanted to make sure that you're aware so that you could spread the news. So here's some warnings that go out to everybody in the U.S.
If anyone in your family is planning to move this summer, you definitely need to hear this. There's a warning from the Better Business Bureau that you might want to make sure they are aware of.
Yeah, big time. They're receiving a record number of mover complaints right now. Consumer reporter John Mattery shows how to avoid being scammed so you don't waste your money.
Audrey Costin Shelton is finally unpacking in her new apartment. Something she worried wasn't going to happen. She paid a moving company a $100 deposit, but then the movers never showed.
The moving company says, well, none of our trucks are back, and I can't give you a timeline. Just call back a little bit later.
So they rescheduled, but never showed on the second date or the third date.
Well, they didn't show up on 3 different days?
They said, well, you know, it's late. OSHA says they can only work so many hours, so, you know, you won't be moving today.
She finally canceled and paid some neighbors to move her belongings.
Now, May through August is peak season for moving. The Better Business Bureau says it's also peak season for complaints about movers. Last year, the Bureau had over 1,000 complaints nationwide, up 200% from the year before.
The BBB's Josiel Ehrlich says no-show movers are one of the top complaints. The other, movers holding your goods hostage until you pay more.
Be careful of lowballers. Those are people who come in and give you a very low quote. It all sounds great. They come, they pick up your belongings, they move them, but when it's time to drop them off, they say, hey, wait a minute. We have all these additional fees that we didn't tell you about.
Ehrlich says to protect yourself, get quotes from 3 moving companies. Get a signed, binding estimate or an estimate that says the maximum you will have to pay. And read reviews of the company on the Better Business Bureau's website. Audrey says next move she'll do a lot more research.
Moving is traumatic on its own, but to be pushed back, you know, 3 times.
And that way you don't waste your money. I'm John Matteries.
That's terrible. I mean, there are reports where people's stuff gets held hostage. A lot of these people are holding goods hostage until thousands of additional dollars show up. There's a lot of these, give us $5,000 to go ahead and reserve your time because we're busy. We'll have the movers show up, and then they don't show up. It just keeps going. And it actually happened to me personally. As you guys know, I was in the United States military, and while I was PCSing from one duty location to another, 1/3 of my household shipment got stolen. 1/3 of it, with some things that were very precious to the family, right? Including one of my flight log books. I was trying to achieve my private pilot's license and had 38 hours logged And I was a younger man at the time. Probably shouldn't have went ahead and packed that up, but it somehow got into a box and now it was gone. And unfortunately, the gentleman that taught me how to fly airplanes passed away. So lost 38 hours of flight time. But these are the types of things. A couple months ago, we had Chief Kirkbride on. He had a whole 24-foot vehicle or 24-foot trailer stolen in Texas. So there's also hazards even coming across the country. So, but I tell you what, I urge everybody to get with a reputable company like Freedom Move USA. And if you haven't heard of Freedom Move USA yet, go check it out. Freedom Move USA works with real estate agents all across the United States of America that are held by a code of ethics, that are involved with the move and the actual moving companies that are going from point A to point B. So there's close eyes on everything. And it's also so relevant and integrity based that Perk Plans, which is the largest employee benefit portal in the U.S., companies as large as Lockheed Martin offer these types of programs to their employees. So if you are a real estate professional that is looking to associate yourself with a company like Freedom Move USA, I highly urge you go over there and do it. And also, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys are planning on making a move, you can find one of the real estate agents that are certified with Freedom Move USA. They'll come out, help you evaluate your transaction, and you could save anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000. So not only put that money back into your pocket right now during big inflationary situations like we're dealing with in the U.S., but also have the peace of mind of knowing that your goods are going to go from point A to point B and be handled with care and attention. So, gentlemen, what are your thoughts here regarding a lot of these moving scams? Have you heard some of this stuff out in your marketplaces?
Yeah, it's happened to me too. I had to move an 81-year-old gentleman cross country, and they ended up capturing his materials, all his belongings for like 5 weeks. He had to sleep on a friend's couch at 81 years old with health problems. And they were like, sorry, Department of Transportation regulations, we can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Terrible. It's terrible.
Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, they mentioned one thing it's kind of like when you go to sell a house too. You don't sell a house all the time, so you don't necessarily know how the industries change or what parameters need to be taken. So you talk to a real estate agent to help advise you through that transaction. There's a lot of things in life like that. Moving is one of them. If you haven't moved in 10 years, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a lot of companies that start off and then they fall off, and you don't necessarily know you're giving somebody $5,000 if that's their only move for the month and they're basically going out of business, or they have 25 moves going at one day and they're completely overloaded. So like the Freedom Move USA ecosystem that we've created gives you the ability to have a company like ours who fully vet all the movers. So we already know who the players are in the market. We're already connecting you with the best people and the best real estate agents to help you get into the best possible scenario to move and not have to worry about all these nightmares.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't get scammed, ladies and gentlemen. Hang out with Freedom Move USA. There was some outfits out of Toronto last year. Some scammers went ahead and built about 12 different websites, had a whole bunch of these different shell company type outfits. And so they were just trapping the marketplace. Most homeowners go ahead and jump in Google and they start looking for moving companies around them. And what are you going to do? You're going to call them up. The website looks halfway decent. Give them a call, find out what's going on, and then start the process. And they were actually going and picking up people's goods, and they were taking them to about 5 or 6 different storage facilities. They were offloading the homeowners' goods into those facilities, locking the door, and then they had a team at night picking it all apart, and they were selling the stuff on eBay and everywhere else.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Nick even mentioned earlier, how powerful the internet is these days. Like your phone's sitting around you. You say to your husband or your wife, "Hey, let's move," and all of a sudden, 12 illegitimate websites are tracking your voice, and they pop up and start, retargeting you. And so, I guess it goes back
anything out loud.
Yeah, what do they say? You believe half of what you hear and half of what you see, none of what you hear, like that. You really got to do your diligence and try and find good people that have integrity.
Yeah. Well, we're wrapping up towards the end of the show here, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get going into our 4th of July weekend, let's quickly tap into the mind of Captain Kirk Jaffe. Anything that you need to discuss with us for mortgage news that people need to be aware about?
Yeah, well, I put a couple charts up there for folks to see. You know, rates were about 6.25 last week. They've come down to 6. I saw a rate as low as 5.5 yesterday on a 30-year fixed mortgage with like 1.3 cost. But here's what's going on. This is this chart here is the mortgage-backed securities. So this is what we track in the mortgage industry to see and predict where interest rates are going. You can see up here above like January, this high number, this high line, the highest part of the chart, that was when rates were about 3%. And you can see going into March, things started to crumble. They quickly declined down here into June. That was that run up in mortgage rates. They went from 3% to 6%. And then they've dropped, and they took a really severe drop. We're starting to see them come back up now. We're starting to see the mortgage-backed securities increase in value, which means lower interest rates. So that's a good thing. And again, as I said last show, you know, expect that rates are going to drop going into the summer months, and that's what we're seeing right here. And then they're going to start to increase again going into the first quarter. And the reason that happens is the Fed's going to continue to raise rates, and they usually raise rates for about 8 months at a time, and then they'll start reducing rates. Now, remember, the federal funds rate doesn't impact mortgages directly, but it does influence it. So we can track that. I'll show you one other chart, which is the 10-year, which is a little bit easier to see sometimes, if I can find that one. Sorry. Well, I'll show you. I can't pull it up right away, but the 10-year just runs opposite to this. So the important thing to see on the 10-year is when it gets up here into this opposite range, it's the same kind of chart, but reversed. We're starting to see on the 10-year that it's starting to push back down. When the 10-year note goes down, mortgage rates go down. So those run a little more in line with each other. Right now, the 10-year is at about 3%. It was at 3.25, 3.3 about 10 days ago. So that's a good sign for rates, at least in the short run. So good time to lock in your rates. If you're in a transaction right now and you're buying a home, this is a good week to lock your rate in. Probably rates will be down by 1/4 to 1/8% this week.
Nice.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal. Copy that. Kirk, how can people get in touch with you if they're needing some representation or education?
Yeah, you can always reach me on my cell phone directly at 818-469-2189. My websites are kirkjaffe.com, and the other one is approvemyloankirk.com, where I have about 3 hours of information on how to package your own mortgage, how to take advantage of the underwriters, and make sure you're getting the right deal. But that's what we do in my shop. So if you just want to get the best deal that's qualified for you, give us a call.
Outstanding. Thank you, Kirk. We always appreciate you.
Appreciate
Have
you,
a
Jake.
blessed 4th of July, Kirk. We'll see you
too.
next
Have a
week.
good one.
Yep. Nick, why should people even watch this show?
I tell you, we're getting a little bit more information each episode. We're packing more and more tidbits in here every hour that we go. But yeah, if you're in the real estate industry, you know, it's important to know what the consumer is thinking. And so that's what we're breaking down for you, right? If you are having conversations with people on the daily, you need to know what they're seeing on the news, what they're thinking about. We're breaking all this down at a national level, breaking down each market as we get more and more contributors on the show. So that's why we'd like to ask everybody who's watching, if you want to be on the show and represent your market, head over to runation.com, fill out the form, let us know, because we're always looking for great guests in their market to break down exactly what's going on in your local market so we can bring everybody more education to the real estate space to arm you with all the tools you need to be successful.
Outstanding. Good deal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of this week of the year, and we're moving into the 4th of July long weekend. Please be safe, be responsible, keep your head on a swivel, because we want to see you guys all back next week with all of your fingers and toes. And I think that that's a very relevant statement for each and every single one of you that are planning on lighting off some pyrotechnics.
Yep.
So, and Nick knows a lot about that, but I'm not going to go ahead and tell you what he did, but he's a professional. So he knows how important it is to go ahead and be safe with.
I do have all my fingers and toes right now. So I made it out the other side.
Outstanding. Well, for those of you that are avid watchers, we've launched this firework off before in the past, but we're going to do it again for you. We stream live every Tuesday and Thursday at high noon Eastern, 0900 Pacific. Have a blessed, beautiful, powerful, wonderful Independence Day weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Cheers and charge hard.